on and start this discussion. So thank you everyone for joining us on this 17th day of September 2020. I know it's been a difficult year for the last 6 or 7 months for most of us, but we are still here. We are still, coping, trying to adjust to the changes that are emerging, especially with the COVID-19. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today. It's good to see you, Linda. It's good to have you again, Edwin. Olumayowa, karibu sana. We are glad and we are happy to have you for this session. So in a brief, in a minute or so, maybe I'm going to try and to introduce the topic today. Before then, I get to introduce our speakers for the day, and then we can get into the discussion. So our topic today, it's all about common good. I know most people, depending on the field that maybe someone is working within, you hear of people talk about social welfare and things like that. And the question that most people are always asking is, does my good, or rather, does my good include your good? And I think it's the genesis of what we've come to base the government on, and it's the basis on which we've come to justify so many actions, that are taken by the government. It's always for the social good. The aim is to provide this and that for the society. But at the end of the day, I think the question that most of us can always be asking is, how moral is the common good? And maybe most of these ways that we use to try and justify the means, to assuring some of these social benefits to the society, are they justified? Is it the right thing to do? And most of these actions that we take, is that what you are supposed to do? And I understand that most of you are libertarians, or maybe you've come across the libertarian ideology, and you might have come across terms like individualism and capitalism. And when you look at most governments of the day, and mostly maybe corporate organizations, it's all about making money. It's all about making profit, and that becomes the basis for which most people tend to disagree with some of these ideologies. Business people are becoming selfish. We don't care about our fellow humans, and so arguments like that. And I think it's these notions, maybe for those of you who are libertarians, is the basis on which the discussions maybe with socialists and communists are based. And so today, that is the discussion that we are going to be getting into. We are trying to explore the whole notion of common good. What is common good? And when we talk about common good, what should be the necessary means, to ensure that whatever I'm doing, whatever activity I'm engaging in, when I benefit at the end of the day, someone else will be benefiting. So welcome once again, everyone. So today we are joined by 3 panelists. I know most of you probably have interacted with them. So I'm going to introduce them briefly, and then we get right into the discussion of the day. So we have Edwin Kimani, who is an advocate of the High Court. We have Edwin Kimani, who is an advocate of the High Court, and he has a lot of experience in the legal sector. And of course, during our last session on diplomacy, and open borders, we were with Edwin. So karibu sana, Edwin. We're also joined by Olumayoa Okideran, who is a futurist and the managing director of African Liberty. He is also the director of international program at Students for Liberty, which is the world's largest youth movement for human freedom. And we're also joined by Linda Kavuka, who is the African Programs Manager at African Students for Liberty. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for this session. And I hope that everyone can hear me. So I'm going to begin with you, Linda. From a point of trying to establish what common good is. And yeah, like I said before, most of people, you'll hear people talk of social welfare, and mostly that's something that is common with most economists, and you will hear it a lot with politicians when they are trying to justify this action or that. So Linda, what do you think this common good notion is, and what should it be for this society?
Okay, thank you very much. And I will utilize a common or a simplified description of what common good is to begin the conversation. Right. And so when you refer to common good in the political arena, so this refers to facilities, whether material, cultural, or institutional, that the members of a community provide to all members in order to fulfill a relational obligation they all have to care for certain interests that they have in common. So examples can be road system, public parks, police protection, public safety, the courts, the judicial system. Okay, so this is like, if you're looking at common good in a political sense. But we tend to use the term common good to mean public good, and there's a difference between those two. And also, common good is one of those terms that when you define it, it depends on the context you're looking at it. If you're talking about common good in the political sense, you'll be looking at those like common public systems, as I mentioned, like the road system, security, the judiciary, maybe civil service. But then if you're looking at common good in a society, in a community that is maybe private, that will be something different. And then I've just come up an interesting definition of how there's a difference between common good and public good. For common good to exist, there must be a relational obligation that these people have together. Now, I will use security, which is easier to define in that way. All of us who live in an area, we want to live in a secure environment, isn't it? We want to be able to walk and know that we will not be attacked. We want to know that I can go and buy something and I won't be robbed. I want to be able to buy property and be confident that it will be safe. So even within my own private space, I still need to be secure. And my neighbor, even in enjoying their own public space, they all need security. We need security and that confidence to know that we are secure. So the relationship we have is we all have the common goal of wanting security. And then security will thus be a common good because we share a common interest. And my behavior in society will have to be in line with that common interest I share with my neighbors. If I behave in a way that will interfere with another person's security, I'll go to jail, isn't it? So that's where now the law comes in. I hope I haven't confused you, but this is how I have understood common good. And now I've seen that there is often misconceptions between common good and public good. Those are two different things. And the explanation I have seen is public library. A public library is a public facility open to all of us. However, it is not all members of society who have need with using the library. It's accessible to all of us, but not all of us are bothered or interested or will ever use that public library. So it's a public good. not necessarily a common good. And here you will see sometimes even philosophers, they use those two terms interchangeably. So when we're looking at common good, you have to be careful about the context with which you're looking into this matter. And for us today, our discussion, in my opinion, is centered around common good related to governance with government. So my colleagues and myself will be looking at, when we're looking at governance, where does common good come in? And if you talk about capitalism and individualism, you're going into the private realm, and you want to see, like, in the business world, in the private sector, is there common good? Should it be there? And what is it? And then I find that the statements you have made are the common arguments and the contradictions of common good, where it is lacking or not. And like as I finalize, a main argument is that people who advocate for communism, they say that a private life lacks the morality of a common good, which I obviously, as a libertarian, I disagree with. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Linda. The reason why I base at this argument, in terms of trying to debunk the issues that people have with, the whole ideology of individualism and capitalism, because if I argue to people, or rather I tell someone that I'm for capitalism, the very first thing that I think about is that this guy is selfish, right? So that is one of the main basis that people will use to argue against capitalism. And everyone, I'm only trying to enrich myself, and I can always, take advantage of other people. And I think that's why most of us, or rather most of members of the society, have come to lose their trust, in most government institutions and corporate organizations. And that's why today I want us to focus now on trying to debunk some of these notions, trying to paint a picture for our audience today. If someone is a capitalist, at the end of the day, what good does that accrue to the sample? A libertarian is trying to argue for, let's say, or rather against a political ideology like communism and socialism. What is wrong with the notion with the notion of that now the government, or rather can be planning, trying to plan the market systems and all that, trying to establish, that a social welfare for everyone. So now I'll move to Edwin. And Edwin, if you can still hear me, because I can't see you on video. Do you think that your good include mine, or rather does my good include yours?
First of all, thank you for the question, and maybe to revisit what Linda has said.
Yeah, welcome.
Maybe paraphrase it. There are certain things that are good for you that are also good for me. Right. And that boils down to what Linda was trying to say. What is the common good? And I'll probably choose a different definition for it. It is that which assists the basic cell within the organ of the society, which is the sovereign, and that is the individual, reach their potential within the mass organ of the society. And then there's the public good. Public good has been defined maybe within the judicial setting of Kenya, within it's called the public toilets case, where the courts decided that, for example, a public toilet in itself is a public good, and people should not pay for it because in as much as it serves the purpose of the society, it assists the society reach certain goods, certain levels of equality. Now, to go back to what you're saying, if as an individual, I see that I need to start a certain enterprise, why then should the government come and tell me that I cannot partake of that enterprise? It serves the good of the society that I take up that enterprise because I serve the purpose of delivering a certain good or service that naturally, to a certain extent, cannot be delivered by the government. Central planning does not resolve all the problems of the society, but allowing mass participation, democratizing development assists in delivering all the goods and services needed within a society. Yeah, I think that's my response to that.
Okay. Thank you so much. Now, I'd like us now to move to to the whole idea of individualism and capitalism, and then we'll proceed on to try to talk about free markets and maybe the role of the government and all these, and try to find a way, for a person like myself, how can I be able to convince someone, my friend, who is arguing maybe for socialism, that capitalism is good. And this is why where now I want to bring on Mayowa in the definition of the two terms. I think in the past we've had Linda, we've also had Edwin, and yeah, they've defined for us for capitalism. So Mayowa, talk to us about what you understand by, or rather, and also give us a libertarian understanding of individualism and capitalism.
Thank you very much, Musila. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go ahead.
Awesome. Thanks. So first and foremost, I would like to
Sorry? Can you hear us, Mayowa? I don't know. Linda, can you hear me? Edwin?
Yes, I can hear you. I think
yes, I can
Mayowa
hear
is
you.
facing a technical issue, yeah.
Yeah, so it's Mayowa that we lost. So Linda, talk to us about individualism as we try to get
Okay.
Mayowa back.
There are two different things, individualism and capitalism, okay? But
Right.
maybe I can just speak about capitalism. Capitalism is that concept that is often misunderstood, severely misunderstood, especially back in Africa. Okay, Mayo is back, so I'll let him.
Yeah.
Sorry, my apologies.
Okay,
my internet has been sketchy. It's been raining for a bit. So
okay.
I was saying that there's been a conflation between communitarianism and communism, and so when you have a conversation with many African intellectuals, the first argument that they put forward against individualism or capitalism is that Africans inherently are communist by nature, and they would point at examples of us living in clans. As a Nigerian, as a Yoruba man, we have something we call Agbole. Agbole is a collective of houses or families that live together, share bread together, and that's how my forefathers lived. So, and I believe that these examples can be found in many parts of the continent. So, when you have this conversation with African intellectuals, many of them, professors, would say
Right.
that Africans are inherently communist. The problem, though, is that they are conflating the ideas of communitarianism with the ideas of communism. They may sound alike, they are inherently different. They are not the same. And I would argue that we would find many elements of free markets and individualism in the way our forefathers lived their lives. And
Right.
also, when you talk about individualism, some people conflate that again to mean what some people call atomistic individualism. So by atomistic individualism, they mean that individuals live secluded, they live away from society. They live as if the society does not exist. Now, that's not what individualism is, right? Some people, promote what they would call atomistic individualism and will say that people should live as though society does not exist, as though they are detached from society. Now, so when you talk about individualism, that image immediately comes to the mind of many people. They see individualism as that, one which an individual does not want to relate with society, wants to live on his own and wants to be successful. However, the situation is not so. Individualism, promotes for cooperation. You cannot have cooperation. You cannot have individualism without cooperation. Trade by default is an arrangement of multiple individuals. It could be two or more individuals. You cannot have trade if there's not somebody else to exchange with, right? So you have to have some level of cooperation for a society, for societal ordering that embraces individualism to exist. That has to be. So if we have this conversation about individualism, we always need to talk about cooperation as it follows individualism. One cannot exist without the other. And you'd find many elements of people, entrepreneurs. Our forefathers were farmers, traders. There was a huge trade in pre-colonial, most of pre-colonial Africa, especially in West Africa, where we had Timbuktu, we had the old Oyo Empire, we had all of this huge trade spots with people, individuals, not in this case, not governments, not kings, not chiefs. These were individual farmers, even as irrespective of the scale in which they produced their farm produce. There was a system of trade that relied on the backs of individual farmers who did it for what they did it for personal profit. They didn't do it for a chief or for a king. It was individuals looking to gain personal profit, who were farming or selling cotton or selling whatnot. And it's important to go back to these examples, mostly because they may seem very simplistic, but it's important to go back to these examples to paint a picture of trade and the individual lives of entrepreneurs, farmers, cotton farmers, yam farmers in pre-colonial Africa, to dispel that falsehood about Africans inherently being communist. Because once you break down, you break down the definition of communism, and you look at what the definition of communitarianism is, you would say that Africans were a lot more communitarian in how they live their lives. They were not, it's not communism. It's very different. And once that is taken out of the way, it makes the notion of individualism and capitalism, basically free trade, a lot more clear to people who have disagreements with those systems.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much, Mario. And I like the when it comes to trade, I like that you bring out the idea of individuals making choices and enjoying that autonomy, to enter into contracts, make decisions, and so. And the fact that you are bringing out the whole consideration of making personal profits, being the reason why someone would be careful with the sort of decisions they are making, because I'm bound to be very careful when maybe I'm investing some money into some projects when I know very well that probably I'm not going to be making are making any profit. So yeah, thank you so much for that insight. And you've also brought out another terminology, communitarianism. The whole notion that African societies, most of them, lived in those in communities. But now I want to talk about the personal the making of personal profits. As I move on to Edwin, because now the next step is that he's going to be talking to us about capitalism, and trying to identify the good that lies in having a capitalist a system, rather a free market. So Edwin, how moral is would it be for me, to focus on making profit? Well, and does my making of profits, have to mean that someone is will have to be losing? And when I'm making profits, what good comes to the society? Edwin, if you can still hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. And you ask very good and pertinent questions. And one is about morality and profit.
Right.
And I like to delve into this argument and make an example of prostitution. That one, a prostitute, for example, or a sex worker, positions him or herself at a place and at a time when they will make profit. And the last thing on their mind is the morality of it. And the other thing we have to understand that what is moral to you is not moral to me. And therefore, morality and profit do not entirely mix. We should not really focus on the question of morality and profit, because one of the things that capitalism affords us is to present our bodies, our minds, and our abilities to the market and get paid by the market for what we offer to the market. On the other thing, on the question of persons getting hurt, in one way or another, and just as Linda said, there is the common good. I'll also make the example of a thief or a robber who positions him or herself at a place and at a time when they can take advantage of what is presented before them. They could very well as well hurt this person and take what the person has worked hard to get. And that is where we have now the common good. Is it within the common good that people should get injured for the other person to be fed? Entirely not. But the society, and this is where the government can come in and regulate that. Clearly, the society sees that collectively, certain things are not good, such as robbery, such as stealing, and therefore provide laws that are democratically accepted by the society and regulate what people get and how they get, but entirely not how they present themselves to the market and how they price themselves. So entirely, morality and capitalism and profit do not entirely mix. There are certain liberties that we have that are not granted by the government. They exist and we have them because we are entirely human beings. And that is how we project ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Just to remind our audience, we are talking to Lumayoa, Dylan from Nigeria. We also have Edwin Kimani and Linda Kavuka from Kenya. And we're talking about the common good, and mostly what we are focusing on is notion of individualism and the capitalist system. And what we are trying to establish is the morality of these two ideologies. Now, Linda, and then Mayowa. Edwin has brought up a very interesting point on morality, profits, and capitalism. I'd like to know what your views are. Whether you agree with him on that particular topic. Linda, and then Mayowa.
Yeah, he has indeed brought in an interesting description, and he has used the most simple terms for anybody to understand: a thief and a prostitute, and in the nature of their works and what they're doing. So let me even go to the second question you asked, which is related to this second question. Okay. When you're making a profit, are you taking away something from another that is rightfully theirs? And the answer is no. Now, in the beginning, I said capitalism is one very misunderstood concept. And especially here in Africa, we ask, in our modern day age, do we have governments that practice capitalism in its true definition? Or we have hybrids of different kind of political governments in place, governance styles. So capitalism, to me, I am for it. I am a heavy proponent of free market, especially. And I see it in a different way. I see it this way. There is our economic lives, and there is our social lives, there is our religious lives, okay? And then the social life and your religious life, those fall in the private ambit, even your economic life. But there are certain times where you interact with people in the public spaces when you're doing different things. For example, you said when you're trading. And where do we come from? If you look at what capitalism means, it's economic environment being controlled by individuals, like the private citizens. It is, a person being able to sell and a buyer being able to buy. The two of them coming up with an agreement, entering into a contract of, purchase and selling without intervention in the private ambit. But that is not what we have today. So what we have is, the government is expanding. I want to bring in some controversial topics here now. Expanding its role of protecting you. And if you look at how regulations have come about, the main reasoning is to protect the citizenry, to defend you, to protect you from people who are trying to take advantage of you. Protection they do have in relation to security. But then when you overprotect, you're now interfering with a person's private citizenry. And then we end up with big government we have now. So if I'm doing business, and okay, as you also said somewhere that if you're an individual and you want to focus in your private life in business, you're considered as selfish because you're not thinking of people in society. What is it that you want from society? Or
Linda is with us. Mayowa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I think we've lost Linda a bit. Yeah. So can you come in as we wait for Linda?
Yeah, sure. So I like to use the word profit, mostly because everyone really understands that. It's easier to say that you are against capitalism, but it's much difficult for you to come out to say you are against profit.
Right. Yeah.
It basically means one and the same, because if you say you are against profit, then you look weird. You sound very weird.
Yeah, that's true.
Unfortunately, the word capitalism has been vilified and demonized by the left. You'll be surprised that the word profit is becoming something similar to the word capitalism. skeptical of. I mean, like people on the left, most people on the left would also.
All right. Well, I think it's like we are also losing Mayowa. Linda, continue, please.
Yeah, we are being sabotaged. You're being sabotaged because we are speaking about very controversial issues here. And anyway, I was just trying to give more insight into why, how I think. I don't look at capitalism in the sense of, one person being selfish versus the other. And today there's an article in Kenya written by the Business Daily, which I'll refer you to go and check. And it was about business and how sellers are looking at their customers. Are you looking at your customers as customers in different businesses, or you have a special relationship with them? So the articles mentions 3 different categories: education, transport, and the other I've forgotten. So they said in school, schools do not look at parents as customers. Do they look at them as customers? They call them parents. They call them parents, and the relationship with them is like they look at them as people, as special, and come up with the best programs for their children to fit their needs. And when you're using your public transport, in Kenya, we call them matatus. The matatu looking at you as someone who's going to buy like food, or they're looking at you as their passenger. They don't even call you customer, like maybe in the street, but you're a passenger to come to show you that special relationship you have with them. Obviously, we are very different people in society. Within us, as it should be, there are good people and there are bad people. There are selfish people and there are people who have better outlook. There are those who care and there are those who have their own personal interests. Now, how is there a need to regulate how people feel or how people behave, people's characters? And that's where now you start seeing conversations of morality and the law. Is there a need for you to regulate people's characters? And if you do this, what then happens? Then you find a situation where there's too much regulation in the argument that we are protecting buyers from sellers or from people who are selfish. Why do you feel the need to protect them? And so if you are to let capitalism do its job and people trade freely in a market, buyers and sellers will figure out their relationship. Now, there'll be competition. They're different. Like if you go online now on Instagram, there are so many people telling the exact same thing all over the place. But then there's differences in their style of communication, in their marketing, in the products that they have that will make you choose one over the other. And if you are engaged.
Right. Yeah. Again, once again, I think it's like we've lost. Oh yeah, Linda, you're still with us. Please go ahead.
Yes, I am. Whenever people advocate heavily for communism, and they say it is because, you see, we have very, very people are greedy. You even look at, do we have capitalism? Do we have a free market economy? The argument is, you have monopolies. And in African countries, you need to look at the monopolies we have. Do we have monopolies from business or is it by design? And we know for us, corruption is a very big issue, and nepotism and political connections. We even question people who are very rich in African countries, because if you look, there's this rumor that you must be politically connected for you to gain some certain amount of wealth in African countries. And if it all boils down to go back to looking at what capitalism is and business, and how one is making income and the other isn't, is the challenge the system of governance, capitalism, or it's other issues that are affecting even the economy? And even, do we really understand capitalism, what it is, or we have a misconception that we have refused to agree with? So I agree heavily with Edwin, and that is my argument for it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so let me ask you, Mayowa. Linda has mentioned, as she was finishing, she has mentioned misconception. is it that there are misconceptions about capitalism, or are there really, people and business corporate organizations that are, to put it in quotes, spoiling the name for for capitalism?
So first, I would say there are a lot of misconceptions. Like I mentioned earlier, there are misconceptions with respect to individualism, and there's also misconceptions between communitarianism and communism. Their terminologies are very easy to be misconstrued, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
when I have this conversation with even people who I assume to be libertarian, I would like first to define what I mean by capitalism, because you'll be surprised that even people who you assume would have the same
Yeah.
understanding of the ideas would have a different meaning for it, right? So that's it. You'd misconceptions about capitalism in talking to everyday people, right? Capitalism in their mind is chronic capitalism. It's not the same, right? So, but they are coming to the conversation from a perspective, from an understanding of capitalism as being big business,
Yeah.
main people having connections to the government and having massive businesses at the expense of others, right? And before you can have a meaningful conversation, you need to have define what both, because you just be arguing, right?
Yes.
Because the other guy has a different perspective of what capitalism is, and you have a different perspective, and you are throwing these terms around without thoroughly explaining the differences between how you see what capitalism is. So that's it. There's a lot of misconception with respect to the word capitalism. Most people don't get it, they don't understand it, and one way to approach it is to continue to try to explain what capitalism is, right? I find that it can be very expensive to do that, in my opinion. Expensive in the sense that it takes a lot of energy trying to reorientate individuals about what capitalism is. So I tend to not use the term as much in my conversations. I tend to use the word free markets more. Even that's problematic, but I find profit to be a lot better. That said, profit also, the word profit also is misconstrued because people see, some people see profit as exploitation. And of course, profit is not exploitation. Exploitation is not what we are seeking, right? Profit is, economic surplus that arises, from, doing something beneficial to someone else, right? And, earning, receiving earnings for that. And then when that's profit. It's not for doing something immoral, like, taking money from the government treasury, or, for doing something criminal. So I like to be in conversations where we all understand what the term is. There's no conflation of one term over the other. So usually I would say that, it's useful to try and explain what you mean by a certain terminology, in this case, individualism or capitalism, when having conversations with individuals who, are on the other side of the argument.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mayo. Yeah, of course, I understand that there are a lot of issues that and anyway, it's a problem that every time you are trying to define most of the words that we are dealing with, in the social space these days, feminism, libertarianism, capitalism, and whatever, there appears to be so many definitions and understandings about some of these terminologies. And yeah, I do understand where the problem comes in when you are trying to make sense of whichever ideology, and you may be having a discussion with people who don't really understand what it is or what it is all about. Now, let me get back to Edwin. Yeah, so Edwin, when you are talking about capitalism, you separated morality and profit making and capitalism. But then no, let's look at the whole idea of individualism and capitalism. And I like to believe that they are a sign of a free society. You know, the more maybe a society adopts capitalism, the more we appreciate the notion of individualism. The more we can get to say that the society is getting freer. Not that you sort of separated morality from profits and capitalism, Edwin. Do you suppose that a free market, or rather, let's just go with a free society? Do you suppose that a free society would be considered as a moral achievement? Edwin, if you can still hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. And to answer that question,
Right,
please allow
ahead.
me to revisit. Please allow me to revisit what has been said by the earlier speakers on maybe what has disenfranchised people with the concept of capitalism. There is one big problem when we face capitalism, or maybe why capitalism has been seen as a failure. One big problem that I like to call government. Government
Right.
world over. And to deal with that question, please allow me to come back home to Kenya or to Africa. I don't believe, well, I agree with the other speakers, but I seek to depart from this. We don't have a hybrid system of capitalism as a system within Africa. What we have is private government. It's a system where people who are dissidents, people who don't agree with the government, are punished using the government machinery. And one of the ways that we have seen, for example, here in Kenya, is to use the revenue authority to punish any dissident.
Yeah.
And then those who praise the government, those who are on the side of government, those who suck up to government are rewarded by either getting very good contracts, getting very good tenders, enjoying tax-free services, and even to an extent, not paying taxes. That is very evident in Kenya. And that's why people are questioning the capitalist system that we have.
Right.
In real sense, it's not capitalism because there is no freedom. For capitalism to exist, we have to have freedom. Freedom is the basic essential of capitalism, where I can supply what the market requires, and I am incentivized by the profits that I make. Those are three components: supply and demand, freedom, and incentive, with freedom being the core of capitalism. Now let us come back to the free society. If we have a free society, is that a moral achievement? Again, no. And the reason is this, and I like to make this example of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ made it so that your relationship is not dependent on the rest of the society and the way they relate with God, but the relationship between you, yourself, and God. Now come back to the free market and come back to the society. If you choose to be a prostitute, or if you choose to grow something such as tobacco that is not well agreed by the rest of the society, then in itself, you do something that benefits you and also benefits those who want to consume that. But there are those who view that as very wrong. Again, come back to the religious setting or within the social setting of very many African communities. Prostitution is viewed as a very bad thing. The consumption of alcohol, for example, is seen as a very bad thing in as much as they do it. But then you hurt nobody, because you go there, you pay for the alcohol. If you're seeking the services of a commercial sex worker, you pay that, you pay for the services, and you get the services that you paid for. In itself, it is not a moral thing to have a society that is totally free. But in itself, it is a good thing. Morality in a free society and a freedom to engage in enterprise do not entirely mix. There are certain portions of the free society that are not agreeable with morality. Right. But then it is a good thing when everyone can go seek for themselves within the social setting of the society and make a profit for themselves and be free. Okay, at the core of it all is freedom.
Okay, thank you so much. So, Mayo, if I can come to you, do you agree with Edwin's sentiments on morality and a free society?
Morality is subjective, extremely subjective. I mean, like, there are some parts of morality that we all agree with. You don't take your neighbor's stuff.
So, Mayowa, Linda, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I said today we are being severely sabotaged by people who do not agree with what you're saying. Yeah, as we wait for Maya to come back, I agree with Edwin and also Mayowa. And I was just thinking about something when Edwin was explaining.
Based on religion and based on who you are as a person. Yeah, so it's extremely subjective, and to make regulations or legislation based on what the perceived morality of the populace or of the politicians who are making those laws is extremely, that is actually immoral. It's immoral for legislators to make laws based on their own perception of what morality is, right? So for a senator or a member of the House of Reps to decide that the banning of alcohol is what's next on the agenda because of their religious leanings is immoral in itself. So I would say that we need to take morality out of the discussion, right? As much as possible when making laws, that is. So that because the more we continue to do that, the more we continue to base the laws that are made based on morality, the less of a free society we'll get. There's an issue in Nigeria right now where the government's banning alcohol sold in sachets or small PET bottles. And many of the proponents of that legislation are basing it on morality. And you'd find that they are mostly individuals who subscribe to certain religious restrictions on alcohol. And they're starting by banning sachet alcohol in small bottles, but the goal of it, eventually at some point having massive restrictions on alcohol in a country that is secular, right? It's infringing excessively on the rights of other Nigerians who do not subscribe to that point of view. So it's very important to ensure that when people bring forward the conversation or the arguments based on morality, it's checked as soon as possible, so we do not end up in a system that is that does not respect the individual rights of most people.
Okay, thank you so much, Mayo. So guys, well, I asked you to post any questions that you have on the chat section, and I'm here to see any questions for our panelists. So I hope that yeah, we will also keep the questions coming. We still have a few minutes, maybe about 6 minutes or so before the end of the discussion. So yeah, please go ahead and post any questions that yeah, you might be having for our panelists. Now, Linda, yes,
Yeah.
before we got Mayowa back, please go ahead.
Yes, and
Yeah, and
I
yeah,
wanted to
2
say,
minutes.
no problem. When Edwin was speaking about morality and capitalism and all of that, I remembered something where there's a heavy argument that is ongoing now from philosophers, from jurists on morality and the law, whether those two belong together. And when you talk
Right.
about morality and the law, for the purpose of the audience, think about the Constitution. Now, in Sudan, in a country like Sudan now, their government was based on strict Sharia, like very strict Sharia law. And yesterday, I think they have come to an agreement of separating the state and religion. And in that, I'd like to remember, for those of you who knew, there was a time, maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, there's a lady who married a Christian man, a Muslim lady who married a Christian man, changed her faith, and she was charged with apostasy and sentenced to death. It is the world, like we were all campaigning to save her. And fortunately, after a very long push and pull, I hope it went through. So first, when people who criticize combining morality and law together, they ask, and it's something even Mayowa has raised. When you bring morality into question, is there a standard that we can gauge morality to show that is there a standard to say this is the right kind of morality or the wrong? Can we quantify morality or regulate it? It's not possible because it's such a very wide term. People understand it differently and from the different angles that we come from. Is it religious? Is it community-based? Is it from professionally? So because of the inability for us to quantify it or regulate it, it doesn't make sense to put it in a national law, which now
Right.
affects everybody in the same way, because the way you define morality, it's not equal. Everyone has their own very different way of looking at morality. So when you base your regulation on what is moral or what it isn't, what are the common interests between your belief and the other person whom, as a governor, you're claiming to be protecting? And that's when Maya was saying legislators. Legislators have a relation and an obligation to the people they look up to. Their job is to come up with, laws or make sure that I am living a safe life and I get what I need. But here in Africa, unfortunately, first of all, even these governors, they don't know what their role is. They do not know how to make laws. They do not know the point of law. And then we have now the confusion we have, often being very restrictive regulations and, policing people in the argument of protecting us. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much. Now, let me get back to Edwin. So what we are establishing is that the society is pretty much divided, on what is good and who it is good for. Edwin, how do we restore the common good in such a divided society? Because if I go for capitalism, I want to make some profit. Someone else is calling me selfish and really saying that I'm not for the common good. I'm not for maximizing the social welfare. So how do we go about it?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to realize that the common good is only a common good if it benefits the individual within the setting of the society. And to have
Right.
that, one, we have to have freedom. Freedom is the most important thing, a focus on the individual within the society. If we gauge on the question of morality, And if government, for example, decides to legislate on matters to do with morality, then we as a society take up a different face, not as a liberal society, but as a fascist society, where we dictate upon others what they should be, what they should do, and how they should be within the setting of the society. The society dictates upon the individual, and that is fascism. Government should focus on realizing the potential of the individual. Therefore, it should focus on the person who gave it the mandate, who is the sovereign within the setting of the organ called the society, to empower that person and to realize that this person can meet its objective in the society. And that's how we can achieve equality within the whole setting of the society.
Okay, thank you so much. Olumayowa, as we wind up in maybe a minute or two at most, does empowering every individual fix it for us?
Yes, I mean, understanding that every individual is sovereign, just like Edwin said, understanding that I'm putting every legislation, right. Is paramount.
Right. Looks like Mayowa's we've lost Mayowa again. Linda, if you can hear me. Is it about focusing on the individual?
Yeah, I can understand you. I can hear you. And for me, my parting shot will be when it comes to governance, which is government.
General
right now.
So Mayowa, yeah, welcome back. But we'll be coming back to you. I think we didn't hear much of your last sentiments.
Okay. Yeah, so I was saying, I was just rounding up. I said that.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I said that putting the individual at the forefront of the lawmaking process is very, very important. And also, it's not just, legislators should not also only be looking at making laws. They should be looking at repealing laws. They seem to think that their job is lawmaking. In Nigeria, we call them lawmakers, right? So I think that gives them the perception that they are only there to make laws. I argue that they're also there to repeal laws. So if they get into power, they should, there are so many laws that infringe on the rights of the individual, like too collectivist in nature. Those sort of laws need to be looked at and repealed where they exist.
Yeah, Linda, finally, as we wind up.
Yes, and in looking at the topic of the day, which was common good, assuming your statement was assuming that we do not have common good. So it's not that we do not have common good. Unfortunately, the people we have charged with the responsibility of leading in our governors, they do not know what their role is, as Mayo have said. They don't know what their role is. They do not think about their job. They do not think about the people whose purpose they're in office, which is us, the public, as Edwin said. And therefore, we need to revisit the entire system of governance. Our entire system is broken. And if our system is broken, it means there are loopholes for people now to come and twist, and you have challenges. There's room for corruption. There's room for crazy monopolies and etc. And even right now, there's even room for politicians to remain in power and become dictators and over-regulate in the name of protecting us. Therefore, even we, the people, everyone who's here on this call, do you understand your role? Do you understand why government is in place and the relationship between you and government? or your relationship between you and your neighbor when you're saying there's no common good, and when you're asking for more regulation of problems. Whenever you call government to come and resolve your challenges, do you really understand the role of government? So I think we all need to really revisit everything that we think we know and find the true meanings of these terminologies and attempt at implementing a true free market environment. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Linda. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Yeah, we began, by assuming the fact that what the society is trying to strive for is achieving the common good, and trying to debunk the notions that individualism and capitalism are not focusing on achieving that good. And what we are seeing is like Mayowa was saying, whether it's making the laws or repealing them, wherever the state organs are acting, if at all we are going to have any degree of common good, it's all about focusing on an individual, empowering an individual, because at the end of the day, an individual is more likely, to make decisions that are going to be beneficial for them. If they are doing business, it's all about maximizing the profits for themselves. And yeah, we don't have to go back to the whole discussion of what happens, to my employees, rather every other stakeholder when I have a business, and when at the same time when I'm making some profit. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Like I always say, when we come to the end of these discussions, they don't have to end here. We have to keep talking. We have to keep the conversation going, whether we are engaging our friends, whether we are going back to revisit some of these videos, whether we are going to read more on maybe some of these terminologies, whether we are going to watch more videos on YouTube or wherever that you can access some of these videos. So yeah, so let's keep on striving to create a more freer and prosperous society. So thank you so much for joining us. It's always been a pleasure. Linda, thank you so much for coming back to be with us. We are looking forward to engaging you more and more in other conversations.
Thank you so much.
Mayowa, it's great to have you. We haven't had you in any other session, but I hope that I will continue to make some time for us. Edwin, the same. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us today, and see you next time. I believe that we have another webinar coming up at the end of the month at a date and time that we shall be communicating. So yeah, this video is going to be up on YouTube, Liberty Sparks YouTube channel. You can watch it later. Also, it's there on Facebook, and you're going to be getting it for your emails after this session. So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope to see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.